1 second before we begin. Then we're gonna get going. Just making a couple of edits. Going. All right. But get into this. This ain't gonna be too long. It's a last minute thing. But again, just bear with me, just doing some edits here. Rock. A second. Alrighty, almost there. Good. Alrighty. Back. All right, I think we're good. Just had to do some quick edits there. Hang tight. All right, this is last minute. I know I usually don't come on at this time, but again, I just try to take advantage of free time when I can squeeze these in between because there's a lot going on right now. So this was last minute based on a recent conversation. I just figured I'd touch on this a little bit more. I've touched a bit on this in the past. So I wanted to do a short video on this. Again, I know it's an odd time early in the morning. Well, earlier in the day, I shouldn't say early in the morning. Hold on 1 second. And then obviously to run through some the announcements for the events for the month of March. So let me run through that first before we begin. So we have a whole set of events for the month of May. That's on the Patreon classes, the monthly ritual classes, which I'm going to run through in a second. You can sign up individually for. They're $56 per class, but it's a better value if you sign up on the Patreon page, tier 3, patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. That tier is $25 a month, and it gives you access to all the monthly classes, which makes personally a lot more sense than just paying $56 for each individual one. But whatever you choose, maybe you don't, you're just interested in one or two or whatever. But check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. All of these classes and the ritual and everything I'm about to tell you is on all of these social media platforms. Primordial Chaos 9 on Instagram, Primordial Chaos 2 words on Facebook. You can always stay abreast there, find the latest information as far as shows, classes, rituals, things of that nature. That's the best place to stay in tune. So let me run through the upcoming classes for the month of May. Let me pull that up, just so I have the correct dates. Well, let's finish out with April, the last class for this month, just as a reminder. The last class for this month will be this upcoming Saturday, April 30th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be doing Klipathic Yoga Meditation and Kundalini Awakening class number 5. This is an ongoing series. We're covering, again, just to give you an idea of what we're covering and dealing with in there, we are working with a lot of foundational spiritual practices that are critical and important on this path, okay? It really focuses on key components that, in my opinion, one of the motivations for originally starting this class was I'm starting to see a lot of people don't have those things down packed like they should. And it's usually one of the root causes of why they may not be getting results in their rituals, their spiritual practices, etc. So what we're focusing on in that class is proper breathing, science of breath control, breathing techniques, focus and concentration, meditation, because again, in order to obtain proper states of meditation, one must have breathing and focus and concentration in order to achieve proper meditation. Because people always talk about struggling with meditation. I get it all the time. Every time I go to meditate, I can't focus, I can't concentrate, I get distracted. Well, there's reasons for that. So we go in also a little bit into diet. A high processed food diet will affect that. We talk about that. Processed foods, over excess of carbohydrates, fats, too much sugar. All of those things definitely play a role in an effect. So we discuss that. We deal with the whole, in this class, what we've been dealing with is the whole chakra system and how the chakra system works. The correct way to work with that, raising the dragon or kundalini energy, right? All of this is connected. And another important aspect, because we use invocation a lot, we also get into that, performative utterance or invocation as it's called, and also mantras and chanting and how vibrational frequencies through sound are key components. All of this is connected. These techniques and these practices are very important to really have a good skill, and visualization, very important. It's going to help you across the board with your spiritual work and more. So that's the gist of it. That's this Saturday, April 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that completes the month of April of events and rituals and work. And then we get back into it into the second week of May. I won't be here the first week of May, and that's kind of why I came on today. I'll actually be in New York for a little bit. So nothing going on the first week of May. Need to handle some stuff there. But the first class will be Saturday, May 14th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Shadow work class number 6. We have begun our ritual work in this class. We started in the beginning stages with our journaling. Now this class, I'll be honest with you, this is not a class you can just, this is out of all the ongoing series, this is not a class you can just jump in on the end because you're going to be a little bit behind. You're kind of going to be, not that you're going to be lost, but this class has time, data, stuff that needs to be done within a certain time frame. The only way you can do this with coming in at this late, again, if you go to the Patreon page, all the classes are archived when you join tier 3, patreon.com/Baniti. And there are others who are doing the class in their own time because everything is uploaded, recorded, and archived. That would be the way to do it. You'd have to get caught up. I don't know what the heck is that. Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. No interference. The only way you'd have to get caught up and do the previous 5 classes on your own time, or you'll kind of be lost. It'll defeat the purpose of taking the class because the class has a whole structure to it. We started out with journaling. There's books and materials you need. In addition to that, we've just begun our ritual work, working on these issues that have come up and what we have uncovered in our shadow work. So patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI, tier 3 would be the best option because that, again, all the classes there are archived in regards to that. So it's not a class you could just take 1 or 2 because you'll be lost. It won't make sense, and it won't go in line with what the whole purpose of the intent of the class is. All right. So that is on Saturday, May 14th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then on the following Saturday, May 21st, we have the Esoteric Occult Bible Study class number 5, where we are decoding and breaking down everything in the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, where we're touching on everything, giving you the esoterical and occult breakdown, the symbolisms, what this really means, the origins of where this stuff came from. We show you in depth in this class in detail how the Bible was grafted from stories of cultures that predated it. We talk about that. This has been a very popular class because obviously a lot of us here in the Western Hemisphere, growing up in America, a majority of us came through or were influenced by a heavy Christian background. So this class is a great way of already what you do know, complementing that if you've done research in this area. And this is one of my personal areas of study. And we tackle it all just so you can have that esoterical understanding to see how we as occultists look at the Bible is not the same way a religious person does. So when we are kind of, I don't even know if tacking the word is right, but when we are really going in hard on religion and the Bible, we're going into their concept of it, how they look at from a monotheistic faith-based aspect of it. We don't look at it like that from that perspective. We look at it from a whole different avenue, and the perspective or the purpose of that class is to get you to see it like that. All right. So that class is on the 21st. All right. And then we also have on Friday, Friday, May 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the ritual of Abaddon the Destroyer. And that, again, that ritual deals and is focused on, again, working with and dealing with personal blockages, emotional blockages, mental blockages, spiritual blockages. That's only for Patreon members. You got to be level 3 and above for that. Again, you can go to patreon.com, /Baniti. And then on Saturday, May 28th, the last event for that month is the Eastern Left-Hand Path Occult class number 3. That's Saturday, May 28th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, you can go to the Patreon page, or again, you can sign up individually. That's up to you. To me, it don't make sense to do it individually, but people do it based on your needs. Everything is posted on those platforms. Again, as I said, I usually don't come on at this time. This is a last minute thing. I wanted to throw that stuff out there. All right, so that's the upcoming stuff for the month of May. Just make sure I didn't miss anything. No, we talked about the ending part of April. Other than that, I think we're good as far as that. Also coming up, just a reminder to keep putting it out there. All right. We have in October, and I'm pumping it now because as we do this every year, this will be the 5th year we're doing it. This upcoming October, which is the 27th to the 30th. Okay. October 27th to October 30th. We have the Journey of the Black Adept Conference #5. It's the 5th year we'll be doing it. We had a great turnout last year as we got back to doing it live after this COVID stuff. We'll be doing it live again at the same venue. It'll be in Hollywood, Florida. It starts on the 27th with a meet and greet. Then on October 28th and 29th, there's workshops and classes during the day. There's group ritual workings on Friday and Saturday night. And then we have an open discussion question forum on early Sunday afternoon, and that closes out the event. Put that out there early because I know people have to make travel arrangements. We do it the same time every year, which is the final weekend in the month of October. It's always the last weekend in October. We keep it set like that. This way it's easier to plan because obviously totally understand that it costs money to travel, book a hotel, plane tickets. That's why we keep it that time, because the people that have been coming the last 4 years, get their plane tickets and travel tickets early. If you want to sign up or register for that event, just shoot me an email. That's in the description box. I'll have videos here, and I'll send you that information. We start signing up for that like in July, August. We don't do anything as far as registering now. I would encourage people though to plan your travel if you have the ability, obviously, to do that earlier. That's the purpose putting that out there. And if you need to contact me for a spiritual reading or consultation, that could be I'll send you a full list of the type of readings and consultations that I usually do. It could be a Klipothic demonic reading, ancient Egyptian deity, or Egyptian oracle reading. There's readings with Santa Muerte and the spirits of the dead, Voodoo readings. Also shadow work readings, which is a great place to start. People always ask, where should I start on this spiritual path? And again, just for newer listeners, remember, this is dealing with the occult and the left-hand path. I don't do any of that new agey stuff. Sometimes people contact me for readings and they're a little bit confused and thrown off about, what it is I do. There's a lot of misconceptions about this path. So I'll send you a list of the different types of readings that are offered. And then you can see from there. So you can reach out to me, send me an email, and I'll get you over that list. There's others, rather than just run through them all. I'm sure there's some you can find on the list. Just easy to contact me, and I will send you the list. All right. That's pretty much the gist. I don't think I forgot anything. I just want to make sure everybody's up to par. And again, I know this is last minute, so I don't know how many people will show up for this live. Probably maybe a little less than normally do. Let's see who we got. Shout out to Goddess Isis. Oh, shout out to my brother Chuck Morgan. Chuck Morgan, I want to throw that out there. If you guys haven't seen his site, I know sometimes I've addressed over the past, I don't focus too much on it, about the whole Nuwapian movement that I belonged to a few years back. Check out his nuwapianism.com so you can get some of the gist of the crazy fucked up shit of Dr. York that I've talked about sometimes over the years. But check it out if you want to get some clarity on that. So that's a good page for you guys to take a look at, because I know some of you guys have asked over that for the years. I don't really try to focus too much on that, only when it comes up. Shout out to Akpan Fakwa. Oh man, wow, it's been a minute, brother. Good to see you here. And greetings to everybody else. Other than that, let me get straight into it. So the reason why I came on kind of last minute, I've been dealing with a individual in work. And there's some people that come from, per se, these more lighter paths of Egyptian Cometicism, and it's cool and everything. But what most people don't focus on, as I've said many times before, we always talk about when I say the lighter, fluffier aspects, where the power that it really lies in the power of the spiritual practices. They call it Heka in ancient Egypt, Heka, which is basically Egyptian black magic. And some refer to it in some circles as Luciferian witchcraft and sorcery. And people hear that term and their mind starts to wander to indoctrinated definitions of what that is. Luciferianism, not this fucking YouTube social media concept, if you have, of what Luciferian is. Luciferianism is a path of what they call in Egyptian practices apotheosis, which is self-mastery, right? People hear the word Luciferian, Lucifer, and they think of all these European organizations and satanic churches and all that. That's a small later fragment of what the occult and the left-hand path is. And again, that comes from a lot of ignorance and information that we haven't done our own research. And then people draw their own conclusions and interpretations. But they don't focus on about Egypt, for an example, the coming forth by day. That is a book of magic, rituals, and spells. And unfortunately, some people look at that book almost as some form of a Bible. And that's a big mistake. Because if you've really studied the coming forth by day, or what they call the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you'll see when you're actually going through those books, you'll see there's many places where you're supposed to insert your name, right? It works with all aspects of Heka, whether it's doing destructive magic, regeneration work, healing, for the individual to go into the duat or the abode of the underworld. When we correlate that to the occult, that's going into the inner abyss of your subconscious mind. So when we talk about the void in the abyss and the shadow self, right? This is important because a lot of people don't deal with their true shadow self, right? They avoid it. Some aren't fully conscious and aware of it because all that lurks, I don't even know if lurks is the right word, all that is embedded and ingrained in the subconscious mind must be accessed, good and bad. Now, we always focus on the good stuff. Some of us, as I've talked about many times before, through doing your shadow work, it's very important we uncover what our weaknesses are. What emotional traumas are we dealing with? What mental and emotional blockages are we struggling with, right? And I'll tell you why I'm getting all this and how it correlates to Set and Heru and the harmonization of light and darkness within the Black Adept, right? Either some people are too far to the right and everything is peace and love, kumbaya, I love you, you love me, let's run through grass fields butt naked. That's just not reality. You must first accept the reality. There will never be this false illusion of peace that people promote. Everybody will never be to a point where everybody's getting along and everything is just lovey-dovey. That's just not the real world. And the reason for that is, as I said many times before, because by blood and nature, a lot of us are tribal. We have different blood running through our veins. And just by nature, we are going to be in opposition to other people due to the fact of the blood that runs through our veins. Now, it doesn't mean we can't coexist, but we must coexist with an understanding. We're all going to have different perspectives and different levels of understanding and degrees to different things, which creates sometimes why people cannot get together. The reality is, this is fact, because if you've ever been a part, it could be a group organization, or maybe you started a project and you gathered a certain amount of people in that group or that project, and it always seems like it's just a matter of time before the negative person or the problem person always manifests. It also ties into the fact where you might have met somebody for the very first time and didn't know them. And two things can happen. One, you just, for whatever reason, don't vibe with them, you don't like them, and you don't even know them. But there's a feeling that's activated within. It's just the vibe and the frequency of that individual doesn't resonate with you. And there's the reverse. Sometimes you meet somebody you don't know, and they got such a good vibe for frequency that's in alignment with yours, and you feel like you've known them forever. That's that tribal instinct that I'm talking about that exists and resides within us. That's just fact. So we got to get this illusionary bullshit out of our mind that we all love each other, we're all equal, we're all God's children, we all can get along. That's a bunch of bullshit. The more they sell that narrative, the more we are becoming delusional and disconnected from what life and reality is. But we can coexist. There's an old saying, we can agree to disagree maturely. Some people understand that, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't. Our job, we're not concerned with that. I'm for years now beyond the point. I'm not concerned with people's opinions anymore. I'm not concerned with people's likes and dislikes. I'm not concerned with what people agree with and disagree anymore. That's how you get emotionally drawn in, and that's how you get sucked in, and people try to take advantage, or they try to launch their attacks out of anger because you're not in alignment or agreement with what they say, right? So when you look at ancient Egypt, we're always focusing on this Christian-themed narrative. And a lot of these Kemetic groups do it, these conscious platforms. There's a lot of religious overtones to it because they're not getting to the core and the meat of Egypt. Everybody over the years is always correlated, Horus, or Jesus story. I get all that. The Trinity stuff. And really, when you look at, there's a lot of misconceptions on the research of the 247 negative confessions of Egypt and how, that some of that was grafted from that. And we got the 10 commandments. Well, that's 10 of 247. There's 613 commandments. Across the board, yes, you can see some similarities because they did steal, take, I don't even know if plagiarize is the right word. We have to understand a lot of these more modern day philosophies and religions, yes, they took from a lot of those cultures that predated it, which is obvious. And they just changed the names, dates, and places of some of the individuals in the stories and grafted into their culture. That's the important thing, okay? That's the important thing to understand so you can dispel the myth of that. But what happens is a lot of that gets crossed over into really studying Egyptian Heka or surface Kemeticism, I should say. I see a lot of people come from those previous paths and don't understand working the occult, working this form of Egyptian Heka is going into, and again, I don't even like to use the word darkness too much because people get spooked out with that, but going in to those darker, more intense energies. That's what Egyptian Heka is, okay? One of the challenges is in your work, and that's what the SetHeru whole breakdown that I'm going to kind of talk about helps you with, is how to harmonize the right aspect of light and darkness that the individual needs to be successful on their path of self-mastery. You need both. Now, there are other people who are on the path of the occult, and everything is just dark and gloomy, and I'm so dark, and I'm so intense, and I'm this and I'm that, and that's a mistake, right? We all need a certain formula, balance and harmony of light and darkness, right? But everybody's formula to that is going to vary based on their experiences, based on where they're at in their spiritual journey, based on their personal evolution, because perception must be understood of a strong point of why people have their concept of what truth is to them. And that's totally expected, right? The way you perceive, perception has a lot to do with how a person perceives truth. Perceive has root in the word perception. So I might look at one thing one way and have a whole different perspective. Somebody can look at the same thing and have a complete different perspective than I do. That's okay. But it becomes a problem when two people can't come to the understanding of that, 3 people, 4 people, right? That's why debating and all that can be a little tricky, because when you are, quote unquote, have a difference of opinion with somebody else, it can, turn into, people will use the term, that's pseudo, right? We hear this a lot, right? Pseudo don't always apply to spiritual experiences. Now we have to be careful because a lot of spiritual experiences are subjective by nature, right? It's very personal. Not everything can be explained that's spiritual can be referenced or sourced to a book. So that's where you categorize it subjective. And you're not going to be able to convince others of that, and that's fine. Now, then there's straight up stupidity that don't make sense. That's a whole nother story. I won't even elaborate on that here. But we have to understand when we're dealing with the quote unquote spiritual realm and spiritual experience, some of it can sound bizarre and crazy to some people because they just may not have that understanding or experience. And the individual has the right to make the choice and the decision not to accept that. That's totally okay. But we have to understand, pseudo would be if you're presenting an academic presentation, a scientific historical presentation, and your historical and your data is way out of line. Then that's where that concept, pseudoism, would apply, because science and math obviously, has to add up, right? So when we're dealing with historical data, facts on certain things, that totally get it, that applies. But when we're dealing with spirituality, the spirit realm, it's a little different, right? Because one must come to the realization of that. So the Set Heru, now you might have seen, I've talked about this before, there's an image you will see in ancient Egypt. It's one body with the two heads, one head of Heru, one head of Set. And what that represents, it's trying to show you need just as much as that aggressive energy of Set or darkness. And Set represents the red blood cells, rebellion, right? Now you hear that term rebellion. You also hear him referred to as the god of chaos and confusion. We have to understand the reason why he's called the god of chaos and confusion is because there's a connection there with Apep, or the serpent deity, right? Because we know with the coils of the serpent Apep, Set was the one that was able to make order out of chaos. See, people confuse it. They think through that religious program and indoctrination, there are a lot of people who study ancient Egypt and Kemet and don't have no history of Set prior to the 21st and 22nd dynasty. So let's talk a little bit about that real quick. If you go back prior to the 21st and 22nd dynasties, that position, I said many times before, that you see that Osiris or Usir holds with Anubis in the underworld that assists Anubis in trance or giving the soul the ability to travel through the underworld. That position was originally held by Set when you do your research, right? How did that change? So Set assisted Anubis prior, before we see Osiris in the later dynasty, the last 46 dynasties, where that changed after the Osirian cult took over and ruled Egypt, right? That's when it changed. That's when Set became demonized as some religious devil figure that we see today, right? And it's misinformation. Set was one of the most revered and uplifted and respected deities in Egypt. What happened was when the Osirian cult took rule during that dynastic period, the cult of Set decided they weren't going to go along with this kind of more monotheistic aspect of what spirituality was, where the Setian cult basically said, no, we're going to stay true to our roots. So this is where the difference of opposition comes in. Now Set is demonized as some type of devil character, how religious describes it, and it's carried over into people's perception and understanding of it, which is false, totally false, okay? So when we look at the more modern day understanding of Set, after the 22nd dynasty is what we have sitting in front of us today. So what does that Set, excuse me, the Set Osiris Heru conflict really represent, excuse me, to an occultist, right? To a left-hand path practitioner, okay? Symbolically, what this represents, as I said before, Set represents your higher self and Heru represents the lower self. The story and the war of the two brothers, right? We see this, again, translated across the board, and it transitions from different cultures, right? We see it with Cain and Abel. We see it with Enki and Enlil in the ancient Sumerian culture. We see it multiple times pop up in the Bible stories with Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, right? And other cultures. There's more. I'm just going off of the basics that people are familiar with, right? There's always a conflict between the two warring brothers through the genetics, the bloodline. And that represents the self, because it's showing you how you are constantly at war with your own bloodline, with yourself, with your genetics. how you're fighting and always struggling to exercise your will. And when you exercise your will, there's a weaker and a strong aspect to it, right? You're always trying to exercise that will to make simple decisions like, what am I going to eat for lunch? What am I going to wear today? To making more critical and complex decisions that could be very life transforming, personal, and tough, right? It could be any situation in life, financial, personal, family, right? And then, of course, spiritually, right? Can't forget that, most important. Heru represents the lower or the weaker self, right? So when you that battle represents you struggling and constantly fighting with the lower and the weaker self, right? It has really nothing to do with religion. It talks about the internal war that goes on inside of you, your strengths, your weaknesses. So Set, the rebellion of Set rising up to destroy those weaknesses is what the rebellion is about. When you see the body with the two faces of Set and Heru, again, it represents harmonization of light and darkness within the practicing Black magician or Black adept, right? How do you know this? Again, this is the esoterical occult breakdown of this. You may not agree with all this. That's you're entitled to that. You're going to get lost if you're looking for literalism and trying to correlate this to historical data, because it's pointless. It's not going to make any sense. Okay? When you read the story of Ra's journey through the underworld, I've talked about this off and on over the years, on the Menjet, the boat of Ra or Re, right? And it talks about Ra traversing through the underworld, going through 12 different gates, right? And in each gate, he meets certain deities, right? When he gets to the 5th gate, he can't get through because a Pep stands there. What is this? This, as I've said before, represents you in your spiritual journey, right? As he journeys out, and like when we come on to our path of awakening, we start out, needing work done, right? We start out as we have a lot of rough edges. We have a lot of learning. We have a lot of growing to do. Some would call it the beginning stages of a neophyte, right? So we're learning. We don't know everything. We're on our journey. We're trying to figure this out. That's what happens when Ra starts this journey, right? When he gets to the 5th gate, he can't get through because a Pep is there, and he has to call upon the gods, goddesses, and demons of the underworld or the abode to assist him to get through that gate. This is important because it's the same thing when we come on this path and we're not raised to the level of a god, a goddess, or a master, whatever term you want to use, okay? We're not at that point where we have the knowledge and the ability to overcome our obstacles and blockages and weaknesses. So now when we back up for a minute, and I'm going to slide through the gates just so you can understand what I'm getting at. It's no different when we back up and we see that Ra was trying from night till dawn to try to destroy a Pep, and that was the wrong thing. He didn't understand, or was confused on what he was doing. Then as we read the story, we see Set steps in and shows Ra the correct way to do this. You can't destroy energy, you can only manipulate it. And that's where the confusion came in. That's why Ross spent those hours day in and night out and couldn't accomplish what he was trying to accomplish, okay? It represents you too. When you deal with your personal chaos, you don't have the knowledge and the wisdom to deal with it because you either act off a raw emotion and become reactive rather than become proactive. When does the energy of a Pep and chaos come to you? Same time, during the late hours of the night. How many people have laid in bed at night and then you could have been tired or sleepy, but when the algorithms of the body slow down and you get in sync with the frequency and you're relaxed, the mind now, an influx of thoughts starts to come. And some of us have laid up stressing over what we might have going on in our life, right? Family problems, money problems, personal problems. That's when a Pep, the spirit of a Pep, comes to you, right? The same way, why in the story it's symbolic with Ra journey. When does Ra battle a Pep? Through the hours of midnight to dawn. That's when the spirit of a Pep comes to us on a mental and emotional level. Now Set steps in and shows how you make order out of that chaos. That's why when you do some research,
Some people make both Apep and Set synonymous, which I don't really agree with that. They're not the same thing. They are connected because of what we're talking about here. So when we talk about Set, the deity of chaos and destruction, see, people hear that and they go, oh, that sounds horrific and negative and bad. No, it means the chaos must be destroyed in order to make order out of it. That's where Set came in. Now, when you read the story, you'll see who was at the bark or the front of the boat, navigating it through the darkness and the void. That was Set. Why Set? How come it wasn't Heru? How come it wasn't Osiris? How come it wasn't any of those other fluffy deities? Because they did not have the ability, the knowledge, and the know-how. It had to be Set, because what Set represents. Okay? He navigated the boat. He was at the helm. Read the story, you'll see it. Nobody talks about that. Okay? Now let's back up. As Ra's traveling through the gates, right, we see again, he gets to gate 9, and who does he see guarding that gate? Set and Heru. Now, when Set, you see the manifestation of this, you'll see when you read the story, there's the one body with the head of Set, and then the other with the head of Heru or Horus. That represented now that he was at a point, and it represents to you, when you get to that stage, you're at a point in this journey where you now have the knowledge, the wisdom, and the intellect, and the inner harmony and understanding of how to now work your spiritual path. Because now it represented Ra had got to the point where he had gained that knowledge. He meets Apep again, but this time is able to get through without the assistance of any of the gods and goddesses to fight for him to get through that gate. So he's now raised up to a higher level of spirituality and has mastered himself. So now he can battle the chaos and the Apep. Long story short, read it. It's in the Book of Gates. You can read the whole story yourself. Long story short, that is symbolic and represents all of us when we come into our path to truth and awakening, or our personal path to self-mastery. That story represents the journey and the trials and tribulations we go through on our spiritual path. Okay, that's very important to understand. And this is where the SetHeru harmonization of light and darkness come from. You must first understand, it's not about, we all have our own personal opinion and perspective on things. Sometimes in this growth and change, a lot of things that we thought were reality and truth are going to be questioned. And I personally can attest to, over the years, have gone through that. There's a lot of things prior to coming on this path that I stood behind firmly as being pure truth, and look at now as being completely ridiculous. Okay? Completely ridiculous. You're going to have to challenge yourself. You're going to have to put a lot of things are going to be put into question if you really want to get to your personal path to self-mastery. This is why I don't subscribe to any specific path. This is why you shouldn't give yourself any titles, because you'll limit yourself, right? We use certain adjectives and descriptions to describe what we do. And as I've said many times before, I don't even like to really use the term left-hand path or occult, but it's something people are familiar with and can connect with. I like to refer to it more as a path of self-mastery. But one must go into the darkness to do the work of the light. It's not reverse. See, we've been taught reverse from day one. We're always looking for salvation somewhere out there, somewhere outside of ourselves. We're always looking for the answers to some external force that we've created this illusion that's going to give us the answers to all these questions. Well, apotheosis or self-mastery, self-deification, is about obviously you getting up off your butt and doing it for yourself, not depending on anything or anybody. That's what true Luciferian magic is about, right? And in essence, that's what Egyptian Heka is. It's very similar. And it's connected because it's the same energy, right? Same energy as far as what it represents, right? People forget that word in that sense, self-mastery. It didn't say outside of you mastery, somebody else do it for you mastery, something's coming for you mastery. None of that stuff is real. The quicker you realize that, the simpler your life becomes, in the sense that you don't have time for bullshit. You don't fall for the okie doke. You don't fall for any of these conscious pimps that have come over the years, as I've talked about many times. You don't fall for these groups. You don't fall for these platforms that are on YouTube that are trying to get you to join something, become part of something, a member, and then come through the back door and hit you up with some hustle, right? This happens. This is a reality, right? When you have the knowledge of self, I said, step one, coming on this path. Always ask people, why do you want to come on this path? Right? Because it's not a mainstream, widely accepted path. There's a lot of misconceptions. If you say you're an occultist, a left-hand path practitioner, you practice dark magic, you start mentioning things such as Lucifer, you know, Belial, and working with goetic demons, people already have this fucked up perception of it. So right out the gate, you got 2-3 strikes against you, right? So I always ask, what interests you in this path and what got you here? And what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish on this path? Really, you should ask yourself that across the board, anything with spirituality. What is your purpose on this path? What is your intent? And what are you trying to accomplish? Yeah, you get the generic things. I want to learn. I'm interested. I want to grow, right? But be a little bit more detailed. One thing, first and foremost, your goal being on this path, okay, should be having knowledge of self. That should be your first ultimate goal. Having the true knowledge of yourself. Because if you truly have that power and that understanding, then all other things start to manifest and take shape and form. As I said many times before, the problem is people come on this path and they got very exterior and materialistic goals. That's it. They want to become rich. They want money. They want to cast spells, love spells. They want to do lust and sex magic and all this other shit. And that's, look, if that's your business and your priority, that's your business and your priority. But I can tell you out the gate, that's the wrong approach. Whatever things you are desiring on a physical, worldly level, those things will come. But it must start with gaining knowledge of yourself, right? It must start by gaining wisdom, right? Because your wisdom shows how well you understand and put into practice your knowledge, okay? So that should be your first goal. So ask yourself, why are you here? And if you're not willing to go into the darkness to do this work, then this is not a path for you. Okay, stay wherever you came from, Christianity, Ifa, Santeria, stay in being a Kemetic practitioner, whatever it is you do, right? But that's not what ancient Egypt taught when you look at it. Ancient Egypt also went into the darkness, right? And the symbolism and the power of what SetHeru represents in this case is everything that we're trying to obtain as practicing adepts on this path. This is how we look at SetHeru and what SetHeru represents, right? I need to go into those aspects of myself. I need to uncover what are my weaknesses? What behaviors and habits and characteristics do I have that's creating these blockages and problems, right? This path teaches you to question and get into context your emotions, right? Because emotions, it could be a motherfucker. They could be very destructive if we don't have control, right? So we have to look at ourselves and we have to say, what is it that I am very skilled at, that are my strengths, which that's the easy part, because you keep enhancing those strengths, right, through your work. But the hard part is being real with yourself. What are my issues? What are my struggles? What is it I need to work on that's going to get me over the hump? It could be a multitude of things. This is what the SetHeru story really represents, right? We see this rise up in the rebellion, right? We see this attack that's launched, right? Via Osiris or Osir and Heru or Horus, right? So that's when you as an adept take on the mentality that enough's enough. I'm not going to give in to my lower or weaker self, right? I'm gonna rise up and make the changes that I need to make in order for me to master myself. And this is why we say this is a path of self-mastery. It is an esoteric or occult path, because you're looking at the more spiritual meanings of what these things truly represent, right? So when we look at, coupled with the story of Ra's journey through the underworld, the story of SetHeru, the story of the Hawuti, as they call it, the he of two faces, right? One of Heru, one of Set. This is an important symbolism in our spiritual studies and studying Egyptian Heka. Nobody talks about black magic. Nobody talks about the sorcery that was used in Egypt. Nobody talks, not just in Egypt, you can go to other African cultures and nobody talks about the primitive African culture. Nobody talks about what place does voodoo have in consciousness and spirituality, right? Because they incorporate a lot of what we're talking about here. How come that's not talked about, right? We act as if it doesn't exist, but that's where the true power lies. So whatever your understanding of magic and sorcery is, people have it totally twisted because they've been influenced and indoctrinated by what a lot of mainstream opinions are out there, not realizing that that's not the correct way to look at this. The correct way to look at this, look, when you look at, again, as I said, the coming forth by day, as you see in that book, it's a book of spells. It's a book of rituals connecting with the spirits of the dead. And that's just scratching on the surface, but it's there as a whole. So what is Heka? What is Egyptian magic in this case? And how come in mine it's not talked about, right? On a wide scale level. Because this is not a recognized mainstream path. People don't accept this as such. Right? But guess what? We don't care. Shit's irrelevant to us. The main thing that's important for all those practitioners on this type of path is that you're getting results. And as I said before, if you're getting results, it doesn't matter if somebody agrees with what you're doing or not. It doesn't matter if somebody likes or hates what you're doing or not. All that matters is it's changing you, you're getting results. Who cares? Okay? This is important, right? And the SetHeru really, in a nutshell, excuse me, I apologize for yawning, man. I was up all night. It really explains and puts it into context of what it is we're trying to do and what it is it represents that we do, okay? We've done rituals on this. Matter of fact, we've done stuff like with this on the Patreon page. We've done classes on this to a certain degree. And the message here is, it's real simple. In order to have that harmonization, you must really truly understand yourself in regards to when do I need those darker forces or darker energy? Your spirit's going to let you know. When do you need to pull back and work with some healing energy or lighter energy? Your spirit will let you know if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's why I say everybody has a different balance or harmonization or formula. You have to find that niche through your work, through your experiences. Look, the days are gone where you're going to hold somebody's hand and they're going to do it all for you, because they're not. Nobody can do this for you. You have to want to do it for yourself. Okay? You have to do it for yourself. Because if you think you're going to put your livelihood, your soul in the hands of somebody else, and they're going to give you that spiritual salvation that you're looking for, you're going to be deceived. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's time now to do what needs to be done. We don't have tomorrow. You see what's going on out here. It's getting fucking crazy out here. I told you guys in the beginning of the year, it's going to be a lot of crazy people going fucking nuts, crazy, out of their mind. It's happening. You see it in the news. You see it all around you. As these changes start to occur, yes, there's some astrological aspect to this. Yes, as we go through certain astrological signs and the planets rotate and get closer, and our planet gets closer to the sun, yes, this is going to affect people's mental state, right? And people that ain't ready for that mental shift, these are the ones that go fucking batshit crazy, commit mass shootings, or do some crazy, bizarre shit, because all the changes that's going on, they don't know how to put them into perspective. And the energy is not, they're not able to assimilate the energies within when these changes happen and they start to go batshit fucking crazy. As I said, at the end of the year, going into the beginning of this year, this is a critical year for people to get their shit together. Trust me when I tell you, right? It's the year of the 6, 2022, right? We know what that really represents. We know when we reverse it, it's a 9, and we know 9 represents the black flame of consciousness of Set, right? We're in the 4th month, right? Multiple 2, the 6-2022, June is the 10. And we know the 10, right? There's a lot of numerological breakdown in this. We know the 10 represents starting over, going through a serious change, one stage of existence dying, and a new spiritual evolution or a new path beginning or opening. Why? When you look in your line up, the 0, right? You have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it starts over again. But you go to the left, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You go to the right, it's 0. There's no number as we know after 9, right? It starts over again. It represents regeneration and renewal. Also, the 10, as we know, when we get to the 9th to the 10th, right? We know the 10th, that's the last cliff off that the individual goes through, that Lilith pulls them through before they go through the Sitra Akra to the other side, which is the 1 and the 1, which is the 2. And now we're back to the year 20222, right? The 6 and the 2. The spirit communicates, as I said many times before, through numbers. You must use all your spiritual faculties. People are always looking for some aesthetic external experience. I know we got the spookies out there that think some fucking figure is going to come floating above them and say, you are my chosen son or daughter. It's just not the way this works. You must look at and decode what they are placing in front of you. Okay? This is important to understand. There's symbolicism and spiritual connections and all this. So we're in the 4-2-2-4-2-0-2-2-2, which is the 10. And as we approach and we go through this year, you're going to see, unfortunately, not to be the bearer of bad news, you're going to see more crazy shit. Okay? So this is why it's important to get that harmony that you need on your spiritual path. It's time. Set represents the cutting away of unnecessary things. That's why he carries the Pekibet knife. That's why Kali carries the Pekibet knife. Sekhmet carries the separated knife of separation. What does that separation represent? Removing things in your life that you need to disassociate with, detach from. That's person, places, and things, right? Because a lot of us are carrying dead baggage, right? We just don't get it. And until you cut away or remove, like Set, those things that need to be removed, you still will become a victim of those circumstances. Okay, you must figure this out, people. You don't have time anymore to bullshit. How much more time are we going to bullshit? But apparently some people do have time. All right, let me go through some of the questions. If you got any questions, I see there's a few questions and comments in the chat. Again, I'm not going to stay on here too much longer. I have maybe about 20 minutes or so. But let's see if we have anything in the chat. All right, so here's a comment. One comment here, I think this was from earlier, Hollow Megata. I'm seeing the Christianity creeping through in a lot of places. It's to be expected, I think. Yeah, it's to be expected. It's not a good thing for it to be expected. Unfortunately, you're right. It is to be expected. But it also has to be addressed. It's also got to change. Because then this cycle this cycle of change cannot manifest to fix and repair the residue and the psychological, emotional, mental trauma that religion has left on a lot of our minds. That's what I meant earlier when I said you see people coming, excuse me, from other paths, bringing old spiritual practices with them on this path. And that's a huge mistake. They still have this religious or monotheistic approach to this path, and that's a huge mistake. So it is to be expected, and it creeps through in certain places, some because it's intentional and they want it to, and some it's more on a infiltrated, more subliminal level. But again, we must address that. We must make that change, right? As I said many times before in the past, you must be able to let go of old paradigms and religions and philosophies in order to be successful on this path, because you're not going to be successful on this path at all. All right. How long we get? It says, ever since high school, I made up this thing I call the spirit of rebellion. Was that Satan? Lol. Well, that spirit or energy that you tapped into, I would say yes. But now again, to people listening, we hear the word Satan, which means adversary. It's just a title. Satan represents the adversarial current, right? He's not some fucking character on a hot sauce bottle with a pitchfork. He's not some character waiting to condemn you to hell. I know religious mythology teaches that because they have to teach that. They had to create something in opposition to what they represented to show how much and how strong and powerful they are. That's why they do it. That's why these narratives are simply created. And it's crazy. It's crazy due to the fact that people accept these fables and myths as almost pure, undiluted truth. Okay? Pure, undiluted truth. And it's not pure, undiluted truth. There's a lot of tampering and man-made influence in a lot of these concepts and perspectives, and we know this, right? So yes, the religion does creep in because people bring it in from their previous paths, and I've seen people bring it in that claim and make statements that they're way, oh no, they're beyond religion now. They underestimate the extent of the psychological and mental trauma that we struggle with, especially more so people. I'm not talking about people maybe didn't come through a super strict environment. Maybe some of you did, but I'm talking about people that do come through that environment. They struggle with it. Okay. All right. What else we got here? So yeah, the comment by Hollow, we get it was ever since high school, I made up this thing I call the spirit of rebellion. Was that Satan? Yes, because as I said, Satanus means adversarial, right? When we use the word adversarial and rebellion together, they go hand in hand. See, you can look at rebellion as a bad thing because you hear the word rebel, but you could be rebelling from some ignorant spiritual practice. You could be rebelling of not accepting and embracing everything somebody tries to present to you. Enjoying something and be in agreement that, oh, you know, can only be done this way. It can only be done like this. There's rules and regulations you're going to have to follow. You're going to have to do things in accordance to those rules and regulations. That's a whole nother ballgame. That's a whole different scenario. That's a whole nother struggle, right? But people bring it over. Unfortunately, you're right. It is expected because now people bring it over consciously and unconsciously. Let's be clear on that. That's part of the problem too. Okay, so all of those things, you are right. It does creep in. All right, let's go to the next question. Yes, so this is from Slim Lewis. Do you see the current of Set as the same as the current of Lucifer, or similar but different? All right, we have to understand of the adversarial current when it comes to this deity, Lucifer, right? There's many different masks of what we're calling Lucifer, right? There's many different aspects and levels to this spirit that we call, or this God that we call Lucifer, right? So when we talk about the many masks of Lucifer, there's an aspect of him called Lord of the Air, right? That's one. There's an aspect of him of Mephistopheles, right? That's another. So we have to understand there's many masks of Lucifer as far as the energy current is concerned. When we're going to ask the question, is the current of Set as the same as the current of Lucifer? Most definitely. Because there's a lot of similarities to what Lucifer represents and what Set represents. But Lucifer would be the highest manifestation of what we're talking about in this class, the light and the darkness, right? Now we see that through the Baphomet, right? Which is a lot of misconception out there on Baphomet. I don't want to get into too much of that. But we see with Lucifer, or the deity that they call Lucifer, there's a thorough understanding of what that energy of Lucifer represents works in accordance with your past. So let me give you an example, okay? If you've done any Luciferian rituals, prior to the ritual, you're always washing your hands, right? Getting yourself in a clean state of mind before a particular ritual. Getting yourself prepared along the lines in the sense to be receptive and how to connect with spirit and deity, right? And putting on the deific mask or understanding the different masks of Lucifer. And if it's in line, as you say, with your question, is it similar to the current of Set? Lucifer? Most definitely. Because they both represent very similar aspects, right? Rebellion, being nonconformist, right? Standing firm on your own spiritual practices and beliefs in the sense through your personal understanding that you came to the self-realization of, okay? That's what that means. Now, all the deific masks of Lucifer, whether it's Set, whether it's Satan, whether it's Lucifer, Lord of Air, whether it's Mephistopheles or Mephisto, they all have similar connections, energy and spiritual wise, but there's a different way that you connect with them, right? So most definitely the current of Set has a lot of similarities with the current of Lucifer. That's the same in as far as the goals that's trying to be accounted for and the rituals that's trying to be put into practice, right? It's the same as far as that, but they do have their own separate place. It's tough. I say it's a little hard to explain. It's almost like when you say you use the term, they're the same similar, right? There's a lot of similarities, but they have their own separate functions. They're not quite identically the same, but they are in line with the current. So yes, the Lucifer current is very, very connected to the current of Set, right? So we must take that into, we must take it into the account that even if you're doing ritual workings, let's say, because people always ask this, I'm doing a working and, in this working, I'm working with some of the Klepothic deities, right? I'm working with one of the gods or the goddesses of the underworld. And when we make the intention, again, to do that, it's all in line with that current because Lucifer or Set, if Set represents rebellion and chaos and making order out of that chaos, we do ritual work with Set to better ourselves, to improve ourselves, to destroy the weak ways about ourselves, to rid ourselves and separate from us all those things that's holding us back. And yes, that could be people. Sometimes your biggest cancer and problem is the person that sleeps next to you. And that's a hard pill for some people to swallow. Some people are in denial about that shit. They always think the problems that they're dealing with is of an external nature. or they always think that there's somebody out there trying to attack them or get them. That's my favorite. No, Set and Lucifer, and this is a good question because it sparks a lot of things. Set and Lucifer are the same because your intention should be the same with both. To master yourself, to use that power and energy of those currents to destroy your weaknesses and remanifest them as strengths. Because remember, there's an aspect of Set that's connected to Set called Kepara or Kefara, right? Coming into the realization of who and what you really are, not who you think you are, because most people spend their lives portraying this image of who they think they are. We're all guilty of keeping up with the Joneses. We want to dress a certain way. We want to say certain things, talk a certain way, make people, impress people by doing these things so we can stamp in their mind who we want them to see us as. That's all part of the illusionary you. That's not the real you. Through your shadow work and ritual work, you strip away the veil of the illusionary aspect of yourself so you could truly see what's standing there. That's what Set does through your spiritual work. But be careful. And I say be careful because, as I've said many times before, people underestimate the intensity of the power and the energy of change when it comes in relation to these type of spirits or demons. When you're invoking and working with Set and you're asking and you're activating the energy in your psyche that I want to get this resolved, I want to deal with the change that comes along with it, regardless in any shape, form, or fashion. I think people underestimate how intense that change can come. Lucifer, the light bearer, Lucifer, Lord of intellect, represents the same thing. Because light bearer represents, or the light as we know, or intellect bearer, the light represents the intellect. So when you're working with the mask of the title Lucifer in this case, in relationship to Set, it's the same thing. Because what Lucifer represents is the embodiment of light and darkness in its correct formula. That's why when you look at the clip author, you look at what they call the infernal union. The two seats are governed by the masculine and feminine energies, one representing Lucifer, the other one representing Lilith, which is basically the harmonization of divine masculine and feminine energy that is needed, that needs to be carried out in order to obtain that spiritual harmony, okay? So anyway, without getting too long-winded, yes, they are very similar, and they are very closely linked. What else we got? Yes, and I see you Googled it. Yep. All right, so this is a good question. This comes up all the time. Is there a right-hand path? Heard no mention of it. Is there a left hand just because fewer folks use their left? Well, let's first address the term. Those are just terms. And again, I'm not crazy about using them. When we say left-hand path and right-hand path, what are we saying? We say left, like when something goes to the left, it's not the norm. It's just a term, right? So when you say you're a left-hand path practitioner or you practice left-hand path philosophy, you're saying, again, I'm not a conformist. I think for myself. I make my own choices and decisions. I don't serve nothing or nobody, right? You embrace the responsibility of being a god or a goddess because you know the responsibility that comes along with it, right? So you're accepting a mind frame that is nowhere considered in line with mainstream thinking. You're a non-conformist. So the left, yes, is more, it's not as a more obvious or popular path. It's connected to, in this term, they'll say the left, because that's their definition of saying not mainstream. Now, right-hand path philosophy, all right-hand path spiritual philosophies are your lesser spiritual systems, such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Those would be your right-hand path philosophies. Buddhism, they're just more lighter philosophies because they don't tackle the intense, dark aspects of spirituality. Everything is meditated away. Don't be in the world, don't be of it. They try to create this veil and they try to build up this thing as if they're going to block it out, and it doesn't exist. That doesn't work either, right? So that's all it means when you say left-hand path and right-hand path. You're just using a term to describe what we do and how we approach our spiritual path. So that's what it simply means. And I don't really even like those terms, but they're used on a wide scale level and people are familiar with them. Okay. So all of those lesser paths are right-hand paths of philosophy. Why? Because they don't address going into the void, the abyss, and the deep, dark aspect of your subconscious mind. They don't teach that. They teach you all surface shit. Where, as I've said before, what we do, it starts within. We're teaching you to work your way from inside to the out, whereas most other paths teach it reverse. They're teaching you to work from the outside in. And that's redoing almost everything. And that's why we don't do it. Okay? Hopefully that answers the question. All right. There's another one by Hollow Brigade that says, what is that? I don't know if where did that go? Oh, no, things skipped on me. I'm just finding my spot. It just skipped. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to take a few more questions. Then wrap it up. Try to get to some of the questions. I'm going to skip some of the comments for time's sake. I just don't have time to get to all of them. Hold on. Just give me a second. I hate when this fucking thing skips. All right, so we left off there. It is, with the right-hand path, left-hand path. So hopefully that helps, right? Then you go on to say, I'm here because of childhood experiences that let me know I should be way more advanced than this. I have never cared about money. I stayed broke for so many years because I always hated it. I had to change that. Yes, you must change it because I want to, you're right in everything you said prior to that. But let me make it clear. That's another thing. And I'm not saying you, Howell Brigade, are saying this, but this is bringing up the thought on this. So now I'm speaking just in general real quick before we move on. You should never be broke. I'm not talking about you're going to have struggles. You're going to go through periods and times in life where finances are tight. That's not what I'm talking about. We are supposed to be rich and wealthy, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I've always told people over the years, stay away from paths that get you to accept that being in poverty and being broke is okay, because you have some pie in the sky waiting for you after. Hell no. That is embracing that way of thinking is embracing a path of destruction, because it's going to make you lazy. It's going to make you start to accept in your mind, no matter how well or bad it's going, that it's acceptable to be unsuccessful. Excuse me. And that's what you don't want. It's not. You should, because your success, you should be a living, walking proof and example of what you teach. And if your information is powerful, it should manifest in the results you get. If you're just into some spiritual path and nothing is changing around you and within you, it's time to move on. It's time to make a change. And just because you've been in something for so many years doesn't necessarily mean you're obligated to stay in it, and it doesn't necessarily make it right. I've watched, there's a lot of people who have come on this path over the years that I've known that come in right out the gate, and it's a struggle for them because they're coming from where they were doing something for so long and so many years, and it's almost like they develop a guilt complex of not doing it anymore. Some get over the hump and work their way through it, and they continue to grow and evolve. Some get stuck like Chuck and they go backwards. I've said for years, you will be faced with that type of moment on your journey. We all have been or will be, where we put into question a lot of the things that we were taught as being the truth, okay? All right, so this is a comment earlier by Mystic Moons. A lot of the conflict comes from self-doubt and the inability to trust oneself due to fear. Unconscious fear puts the mind into a consistent fight or flight state. Of course, because fear is a charged up emotion, right? What does that say? The unconscious fear puts the mind into a constant fight or fight state. Yes, especially when you have no knowledge of the situation, right? Because it's that old saying, fear of the unknown, right? And then there's the saying that counteracts it. The only thing to fear is fear itself. That's a powerful statement. No matter how many times we've heard it growing up, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. What it's saying is it's a mindset. If you embrace that fear in your mind as a reality, it manifests as a reality being real. Okay? So we must keep all that stuff in mind. What does this one say? All right, report. I'm jumping all over the place. All right, let me see if I can find any more questions. All right, so this one's from Akpan Faku. How do you create balance between what's real and the so-called metaverse and as they're merging? All right, that's an excellent question, right? You got to understand all that ties into two things: your subjective world or consciousness and your objective world or consciousness, right? Well, first, that balance or harmony factor is different for every individual. There's no set formula that's one way that's going to work for everybody. So as long as we get that out of the way and we understand that, right? The way you balance and determine what's real between the so-called metaverse as they're merging, it's as simple as, well, perception again is going to play an important part of that. When you just make the statement, whether it's silently to yourself or out loud in an audible voice, you are embracing what it actually, literally, the intent or what it says, whether it's the teacher telling you this, whatever, you are embracing, okay, the reality of this. Now, just as we accept things that could be fucked up, for an example, let me give you a real simple explanation. Let's just say somebody was raised a Christian, right? They kind of tricked and forced us to accept it as being a truth and a reality. And we kind of went with the flow because, you know, we didn't really know what was going on, especially some of us that are raised in this. But then as we started to become older, right, while a lot of you are here, as we started to become older, we started to look elsewhere, explore the past. We started to decipher through the bullshit and see the reality, and we need further clarity and deeper answers, right? So the way you prepare and balance yourself out is by getting your mind in line with what you're trying to do, okay? And when I say what you're trying to do, okay? Just as easy as you accept something is just as easy as you can reject it. Sometimes we're looking for some really deep, long, drawn out answer, and it's really a simple answer. When you reject the original program and original programming, and then you re-inject it with a new program that changes the mind and the way you think. That's what's going to create the harmony. You break that chain, and then furthermore, if you do have kids and you're fortunate enough now to pass this on to them, where they're not going to get lost in the church, they're not going to get lost in the masjid, etc., the temple, right? You ultimately make what's real and harmony. Whatever you embrace and accept as truth becomes your reality. So if you wholeheartedly believe in your heart, when you die, you go to this place called hell. Hell exists, right? Within the hearts of man, as they say, right? But if you just push that to the side, what I'm essentially saying, how you do it, it's your I always talk about intent and approach and the way you think. type of thoughts that you form. That's the answer. So it comes with a whole new awakening of doing things completely different than from what we were, forced. And apparently some of us were able to keep those Bibles in good shape, and that's cool. Okay, that's cool. All right. So what else we got here? But it's as simple as what you accept is just as easy to reject. Okay. Now, this whole thing with the metaverse, right? That's becoming a big thing. Facebook is the metaverse right now, as they say, right? The metaverse is just another way of saying the many different realms that exist within the subconscious mind, right? Remember, they took the internet and they call it a virtual reality, right? Of limited possibilities. Now, as I've said, with technology, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, whether it's cell phones, tablets, and all these other aspects of technology that we have, they are a good and a bad thing. The good aspect, we can reach multiple people in the blink of an eye like this. We can connect with multiple people. It can be used as a teaching tool for a lot of personal positive things, but there's a lot of destructiveness to it too, right? There's a lot of mind control. There's a lot of behavior monitoring, right? That they can use through these tools. There's a lot of ways they can control and shift your emotions into their frequency and vibration and line and way of thinking by all the bullshit they promote through advertisements. I mean, just look at this one simple thing. Depending on how old you are, right? I look at myself for an example, right? If you're my age, 50 and above, or even in your 40s, right? Before we had, before computers were so wide scale, and before we had these cell phones, which basically is everything at the tip of your hand, so it's a mini supercomputer. You weren't not that the indoctrination didn't exist prior to these technologies, but it wasn't constantly fed to you all day. What do I mean by that? Most people, I'm gonna say large portion, you get up in the morning to show how you're influenced by media and social media and technology and gadgets. You get up in the morning, you're either playing radio, the TV, it starts early in the morning. You're in your car, you're using some form of media. You could be at work, there might be radio and TV on there, you're being exposed to media all day. You got apps on your phone where notifications come up, news. So now they have a mechanism to program you 24 hours. News is hitting you upside the head. Whereas if you go back in the day, in the 80s, early 90s, if you weren't getting your news from TV or the radio, you weren't as influenced by it. It wasn't all around you to the level that it is now. You don't realize the psychological effect that it has every time. Look, a lot of people have this issue if they realize. How many people sit down, right? You see this shit all the time. Or you could just be at home. You could be in a restaurant. You could be in a public place. How many people just sit down and anytime a notification comes up, or they can't stay off their phone for more than a minute or two? They're addicted to checking their Facebook notifications. They're addicted to checking their Instagram. Now, I know some people use it for business and other reasons. I get all that. But there's some people who can't go maybe 2 to 3 minutes without looking at notifications on their phone. There's some people who wig the fuck out if they leave their house and they get far and then they realize all of a sudden, oh shit, I left my phone home. Now, some of you motherfuckers might be busy. Some of you might be talking to hoes and shit. No, just kidding. But you leave your phone at home. They have a disease. There's a term they call it. It's social anxiety, but I always forget it. And somebody always remembers it, puts it in the chat. They have a phobia that they've termed called when you leave your phone home. Look how dependent, how easy it is for them to feed off of your emotions. Think about it if you're my age or close to my age or even older. Did we or did we not survive for years without a cell phone? So why the fuck do people act like now, oh my God, I left my cell phone home? And I get it, there's some safety measures to it. Oh, if I get a flat tire, break down. Shit, we survived years. Our cars broke down in the past. We didn't have no cell phone. We did all right. We're still here. If you were fortunate coming up through my era and you had a house phone, that was you were fortunate if you had that. We didn't have to depend on that. And when I reflect back now and I think and I look at the deprogramming process, we were not as aggravated, agitated, and had so much anxiety. And we're dealing with all the bullshit we're dealing with because that technology creates a lot of rage and stress. And it causes a whole bunch of shit that goes on within an individual, consciously and unconsciously. Back then, like if you went out, I remember them days you had to get on the house phone and plan your night and your weekend, and that was it. You didn't have to worry about being out and about. And when you went out back in them days, whether it was to a club, a house party, skating, bowling, whatever the fuck you did, you were truly socializing because you were engaged in the moment. You didn't have this artificial socialization, this phone. That's why they call it a virtual reality, because it's not real. This whole metaverse thing now, right? They're trying to shift your reality and make it artificial. There's another thing they've been promoting for a while now called AI, artificial intelligence. So they're taking the human element out of it. They're disconnecting you from your true essence, your true self. Where if everything is the metaverse and artificial intelligence, AI, now by doing that, they're deprogramming you and reprogramming you with getting you in line by controlling all aspects of your emotions, right? This is all connected to harmonization of light and darkness within the Black Adept. That's true harmony, that's true balance. Because a true master Black Adept or magician is in complete control of their immediate surroundings and environment. We can't control what exists outside of it. It doesn't mean things that's going on in the world aren't happening on real. Because I've gotten this email over the years, because I've said, shit that goes on, everybody that's caught up in conspiracy theories and all these, the pandemic and all this fucking depressing, morbid shit that's going on in the world, it only affects you to the point that you allow it. But let me show you how that's a reality and people don't get it. I've made more money and have excelled and grown during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic. My world has shifted to the better despite what's happening on the surface. Pay attention to what I just said, because there's a fucking jewel in that if you're paying attention and you're listening. What some were looking at as destruction, doom, and gloom, others saw it as a doorway and an opening to a new beginning. Because the pandemic should have made you really go within and reflect, and it should have made a lot of us look at our lives and put them into perspective, because when everything got shut down, it made us think of other things, correct? Longevity, being successful, realizing we had to do something better for ourselves as far as whether it was our financial dependency. Some realized this was time to start their own businesses, do their own things, because we realized that made us come to the realization this working for people shit is not the way to go. So people became inspired to start businesses, focus on what they had going on in their life, their family life, their personal life. And then you had other assholes, I don't know what to do with myself. I've watched everything on Netflix. I'm so bored. You're a fucking idiot is what you are. You're a complete fucking bumbling idiot. These are the people that can't survive without getting drunk and high on the weekends. They got to be out partying and clubbing all the time. They need to be entertained because they ain't got nothing else going on in their life. Those were the people that were going batshit crazy during that. Then there was some of us, even though we had some fucked up shit going on, but some of us got closer with our families, had more time with our children. I didn't look at it in a negative light, right? I looked at it as having time to really see what was going on around me. And I didn't like everything that I saw. So it represented a great time and change. Now, if you go back to old videos I did back in 2014, I told you this great change was coming, all right? I told you there was going to be a serious shift. I'm not talking about these other motherfuckers talking about, oh, the ancestors gave me a download. And everybody was an expert after the pandemic that the ancestors told them the pandemic was coming. But not one motherfucker told you it was coming before it was coming. So I ain't talking about that. I'm not impressed that you got a download after the fact. That shit don't impress me. I'll be impressed if you would have said, 3 months, 4 months before, when nobody had a clue what was going on, that this shit was going to pop off the way it did in detail. Not being vague, not be alluding to it, because there's motherfuckers that do that shit and try to be slick. No, that's not what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen of what's transpired in the last year and a half, 2 years, that it's time to get your shit together, then you will never get your shit together. Period. Period. If you can't see everything that's going, because as I said, and you go back to videos I did in 2020, the world will never be the same as the way you know it ever again. It's shifted the way we do business now. It's shifted the way people live. It's shifted the way they perceive things now. And the list goes on and on and on. Yes, will there be some similarities of levels of normalcy? Most definite. Because just like anything else, we will work our way through it. Now this idiot Fauci just comes out. He just comes out and says, I saw an article yesterday. We're passed through the pandemic phase. Thanks fucking Captain Obvious. Right? See, that's the other thing, being programmed through these social media news things. So my whole point, getting back to, I know I got sidetracked and I went for a whole bunch of other shit. I was simply trying to say that we only had a TV and a radio back then. We didn't have all this constant programming around you right now with the technology. That was their job from game one. Day one, that was their job. Because look, I've said this before. I know you guys have been seeing this a lot recently over the last year or so, or whatever. To show you that thing is linked into that. How many of you went to Google and you wanted to look at some sneakers or something, or you went to Amazon and you wanted to look at a product, and then you go on Facebook or another app where you're surfing the internet and all these ads start to pop up of shit you searched 3-4 days ago. Tell me that ain't a database storing your behavior. You could not fucking tell me otherwise. That now they go through your device and now they monitor, oh, this is what this person likes. This is what they like to buy. This is what they like to eat. This is places they frequent and visit. And then you got these other assholes on the internet that help them out. They get on Facebook and tell you every little thing they're doing in their life. Getting ready to take a vacation to Cancun. Who gives a fuck? Just woke up eating a bowl of fucking Fruit Loops. I don't give a fuck what you eat for breakfast. I don't care. How shallow do you think I am that I give a fuck what you eat? And first of all, idiot, you announced to everybody you're going on vacation. Now I know your house is vacant and I can rob your fucking house. People are so dumb, okay? People are stupid sometimes because they got diarrhea of the mouth and they get too much information, okay? Don't put all your business. That's why I love the people that get on. Look, an app like Facebook, and my personal Facebook account is private. It's a great tool to communicate with family and friends in other states, you know, when you're doing that type of socializing. But some motherfuckers get on there and put all their dirty laundry on there. You want to get on there and have beefs. You want to get on there and talk shit. You don't think they watch all that? And I'm not saying to be paranoid, conspiracy theory. What I'm saying is don't let them captivate your emotions and feed into that shit. Because now we're battling that. Back then, if you didn't listen to the radio or TV, you weren't being bombarded upside the head with all this negative shit. Now it's on your phone. You go into public places, there's usually some TV on. You go everywhere you go. From the moment you get up, there's this programming. And what we're trying to do, a nonconformist, somebody who taps into the isolated consciousness of set, separates themselves from that line of thinking. This is a non-traditional path. If you want to obtain true harmony of light and darkness through the mysteries of Set and Heru, it's not going to be an easy thing because a lot of the things that we work with and deal with on this path is not accepted as mainstream. Me personally, I'm at a point I don't give a fuck. Why? Because I know the work that I'm doing produces results. I don't care if somebody agrees with it, loves, likes, or hates it. That's personal. Because as I've said many times before, once I turn this camera off, I live my life. I'm not affected by any of that shit. I don't care. People's opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. Everybody got an asshole. Well, most people, right? Everybody got one. And that's what opinions are. They're like assholes. Okay. All right. What else we got? A few more here. All right, Logan Scott had a question. A little confusion on my end. Hopefully you can clear it up. There is working with the clip-op, the draconian path, vampirism, and so on. Are these all different branches and avenues of the left-hand path? Yes. There's many different spiritual systems that are connected with what we call the occult or left-hand path. Now, for example, the couple you mentioned there, the clip-op, the draconian path, vampirism. The only thing that differentiates the methodologies and the practices are going to vary. The goals and the purposes and what these paths represent, they're all very similar in nature. It's just the spiritual practices, the rituals, some of the origins and historical information of these paths are going to vary. But there's a lot of similarities because, for an example, you have some of the draconian gods and goddesses that align with some of the vampiric gods and goddesses, such as Set, Sekhmet, etc., Anpu or Anubis, right? So there's a serious connection on that level. There's a lot of similarities, right? Same thing with the clip-op. You will find deities on there that are in alignment with the draconian path of gods and goddesses, such as Lucifer, Samael, Belial, Hecate. The list goes on and on, right? All of them. So they're similar in that sense, most definite, but the functioning through the rituals and some of the work, that's where the difference is going to come. But it's all left-hand path and occult nature because it's all a non-conformist approach to spirituality, right? Remember, the clip-off is the antithesis to the Kabbalistic tree or the Kabbalah. So quote unquote, you're going to, I'm just giving a simple term, you're going to the other side, right? Because the Kabbalistic tree represents life, right? As they say, which they're wrong. It actually represents death. The clip-off, they say, represents death, not death because it's death, doom and gloom, the finality, the end, because death is the doorway to eternal life. I said people got it twisted when they call the realm of the dead. It's really the realm of eternal life for the living. This realm right here is death, okay? Don't fool yourself. We think this is living, and it's not, because the moment you came out of your mother's vagina, you started to die, because you're living to get old. And then what old age brings in at some point is something nobody can avoid, which is death. So we're fooled. How could living be coming out from the other side of darkness in the watery abyss of the womb, or as they call in ancient Egypt, the chaotic waters of Nun, which is the void, the abyss, the darkness. You lived in that dark, watery abyss for 9 months in peace before you were birthed into this physical universe and started to die again. As I said before, I don't care how old you get, when it's cold or you laying out on the couch or in your bed, you're trying to get comfortable, what's the normal, natural thing by nature you do? Get into a fetal position. Why? You don't think your mind forgets? That's when you felt the most secure and safe. You all do. I don't care if you're a grown-ass man, a teenager, a young child, whatever. You lay on the couch, you get comfortable, you get in the fetal position. You get in bed, you do it. It's because in that darkness, in that void, in that silence was when you were in most peaceful state, okay? You were in your most peaceful existence. Now you come and you're birthed into this physical universe and you're getting older. And what happens as you get older? Ailments kick in, injuries, sickness, or natural old age. And eventually it gets you to death physically. And then you transition and evolve on a spiritual level. And now you've entered the stages of what they call eternal life. Death is the doorway to eternal life. That's what the clip-off represents. And that's why at that 10th clip-off, Lilith grabs the initiate. Lilith lusts for the individual, not just sexual lust. She has an affinity for those who lust after sacred knowledge. And only those she reaches for and pulls them through the Sitra Akra or the other side. So when one subconsciously has made that shift, they are now in a realm with no limitations, no parameters, no restrictions. They're in that void in the abyss. They're in that state of primordial chaotic energy where all things have its point of origin. So that's the shit that nobody is willing, or not all are willing to do. And it's not easy, but it's, if you're willing to put in the work, it's rewarding. So yes, the answer to your question, Logan Scott, is they are very similar. They're connected, but they're different branches would be a good way to describe it. And those are just a couple of many, right? Shit, hold on, goddamn. All right, there we go. I think I skipped something here. I'm coming back up. All right. So this one, I think I skipped this one about mystic moons. A lot of the conflict comes from self-doubt and the ability to trust oneself due to fear. Unconscious fear puts the mind into a constant fight or fight state. And that's true. Not really much to add to that. That's so true. This hit me because I was about to second guess myself when the slide popped up. Well, there you go. There's your personal message, right? All right. Yeah. So this was from Hollow Gator. When Corona started and they said stay inside, my mind instantly said go outside as much as possible. Yes. And the thing was to show you that they were fucking with us. They were saying stay inside. And one thing they saw in severe COVID patients, a severe deficiency of that was creating serious illness, and I don't want to stay in the Corona thing too long, was a serious deficiency and lack of vitamin D. Peep the game. High levels of D is one of the key things that fights that virus off. What is the most natural source of vitamin D? The sun. So why were they telling everybody to stay indoors? They should have said safely go outside and get as much sunlight as you can. And it's no coincidence when you go back and do the research of the Spanish flu pandemic, which was horrific and lasted for several years, and people forget about that because that was like a serious corona at that time, right? They started to realize when they started to put patients outside, laying them outside in natural sunlight, they started to recover quickly. Pull that shit up, read it for yourself. I'm not making it up. They know D is a key vitamin that builds and strengthens the immune system and is a natural resistance to a lot of viruses and disease. So of course they told you stay the fuck inside. Gotta think. You gotta think, no doubt. All right, what else we got? Logan Scott. I think that how do you determine which ones are best for you as far as the path? That's through you got to experiment. Unfortunately, there's not a book that's going to say what's right for me. How you determine if you resonate with something, you're connected to it, you do the work, and you get results. Only way you're going to come to that conclusion, you're going to have to do a little experimenting. And you're going to know, your intuition is going to tell you what resonates with you and what works and what doesn't. That's it. Through experimenting. There's no books. There's no, I wish I could tell you there was a foolproof methodology. Unfortunately, there's not. Through your experimenting, you're going to have to figure that out as you cipher through your work. That's how. Okay. All right, what else we got? Daniel Ben Yisrael says, once the great work is achieved and you master yourself within this lifetime, what happens after death? Is it Siket, Aru, or the field of reeds, or do we get to create our own reality in the cosmos? Well, one thing first and foremost, right? We're preparing ourselves, right? Death is a key element in removing the fear of it. One can't attain that state. And what this path is about, one of the key or one of the most foundational factors that one has to master in that journey to master in themselves is to demystify the fear of what they program with us at death. Because all religions and spiritual paths are centered around, you must do this and you must do that. So when it comes time you die, you go to this spiritual bliss and this spiritual euphoria, whether it's called Nirvana or Wahala or Jannah, I'm sorry, or any of these heavenly abodes, right? So step one is understanding that the spiritual planes are all interwoven around you. That stuff doesn't exist. There is no above, there is no below, right? There's only as within, so without. We forget that with the Baphomet, right? As I said before, there's a symbolism with the Baphomet. When he raises and flattens the hands in some of the mystery schools and brings them into the heart chakra, is there as above, so below. There is no above, there is no below. It's only as within, as without. And it's alluding to the above and the below to show you as above, so below. Don't get trapped in that. But once we master ourselves, our weaknesses, and we address the shadow and the hidden self, and we understand every single aspect of ourselves, right? When we make that transition, first and foremost, when we're connecting with these spirits and these deities, right? You do become, and you do create your own reality, if we use the word cosmos, even though it's just a Greek word. Well, on various levels of your subjective universes, yes, you now are laying that foundation. It's almost in line when we look at, when we're working this path and we say, well, how did a spirit become a spirit? How did a God become a God? A lot of these deities that are working within these paths, right? Before they became to this state that we're familiar with them now, how did they get to that state? Because the reality of who and what they are is real to us now, based on where we are at in our existence. But we also have to factor in how many times we've been here before. Now, this is going to also connect to what is your understanding or lack of understanding. This is for everybody, to what reincarnation is, right? If we've been here many times before, why? How? There's different theories and perspectives on that. Some of the spirits we invoke and call upon in that next phase or transition of your existence after death, you now become the one that's called upon. It's being done now right in front of your face when you look at your genealogy and your bloodline. Because look at the basic concept. When your ancestors that have transitioned on, that you call on upon now, they were here at once calling on to those that came before them. So yes, you lay out that reality. Remember, even when you're here physically, you're constantly building and destroying all the time. How? By the choices and the decisions you make. You are the great builder and destroyer. You are the one that is the foundational pillar at the center of your universe. And you build and destroy based on those decisions, because what you accept as truth and what you accept as not truth, based on your choices and decisions. Whatever you accept as being real, that's your reality. And your reality may not be somebody else's reality. And as real as it is to you, it's not real to them, and vice versa. That's in line with the principle, the first Hermetic principle of Tahuti. All is mental. Mental is all. The universe is mental, right? The doctrine of polarity, right? All have root in the source of things, but they just vibrate at different frequencies. Doctrine of vibration and rhythm. As I've said before, to understand those higher spiritual concepts, one really needs to study that Kabal Yun, for those that might be newer, by the 3 initiates, which is the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti. This is why people fuck up when they study ancient Egyptian spirituality. Ma'at this, Ma'at that, the principles of Ma'at, 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 Ma'at. Well, you can't understand the principles of Ma'at until you've mastered the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti. Facts. You don't have to agree with it. I couldn't care. You must, because the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti give you the understanding, and I hate to use this term, but to get the point across, of how it's to be perceived mentally from the other side, right? When you make that transition, it's telling you, when we talk about duality of everything in the universe, it's showing you that concept. It's showing you how, even when we're working spiritual magic, it's showing you the science of tapping into your subjective consciousness and bringing it into existence in your objective consciousness, okay? I mean, there's a lot more layers to that question, but that's, the shorter version. Now, you also must understand the concept of the Ka, the Ib, the Ren, the Akaru, and there's another term, you calling it the SetHeru. We know it in Heka as the Akaru, right? And the Akaru is that state of existence that you're talking about when you get to it. It's complicated because keep in mind this, we're trying to explain things and correlate an understanding of something while we're in 3-dimensional existence, person, place, a thing. That can't be defined by something 3-dimensional or explained. It's no different when a person why people have this God debate is so never ending over the years, because you can't explain God in a three-dimensional existence, because everything that people describe and explain about God falls in line with person, place, and thing. So it's basically a mortal trying to describe something that vibrates at a three-dimensional. You understand? Now, how you come to the realization of what that is through your spiritual travels. When you have OBEs, out-of-body experiences, you astral travel. You leave the body, you're not confined to the physical. Some people understand and get clarity in their personal work with what death really is. And as I said, the bottom line, nobody really knows exactly word verbatim and exactly how it's going to go and what they're going to experience at their time of transition, because it's going to be different for everybody. That's why. Because when everybody transitions at a different level in their spiritual journey, they must pick off in that journey of where they left off. Some have evolved deeper in their spiritual growth, so they're not going to start at the same point as the individual who might be lacking or behind. Because there's not one person without 100% undefiable proof can show exactly what happens at the time you physically die and transition into a spiritual being. Right? The physical deceases, that last breath. We know there's all theories. Religion has their theory. The book Coming Forth, the ancient Egyptian has their theory. The Tibetan Book of the Dead has their theory. But that's just man trying to convey this transitional process. That's why we're all here, because we don't know the 100% answer to that question. People can bullshit you, pretend they do, but it's easy to question. Hopefully that points in the right direction, but there's a lot more layers to that. All right, few more here. What else we got? Because it's time for me to get some grub. All right. Good. This is a good. Yeah. This is from Logan Scott. Would the Old Testament God be considered a vampiric deity, since he required blood sacrifices and blood atonement for disobedience to the laws he established? Yes, vampiric in that sense, because the Old Testament God, now remember, there's spiritual. When we talk about real vampirism, it's not the literal act of drinking blood. It's just the blood is connected to it because the life force and the essence and the spiritual power and energy is in the blood. So like ancient Kemetic or Egyptian vampirism centered on absorbing the consciousness of the spiritual being. It's spiritual energy feeding, right? Now this gets transitioned later, like with the myths of Dracula and vampires. They got it from that practice. But what they did was make it literal. But yes, there's a vicious, aggressive aspect when we look at that in relationship to that comment with the Old Testament God. In that sense of the literal blood drinking aspect of vampirism that was presented later, most definitely, because that God loved death. That Old Testament God loved violence. He loved war, bloodshed. I mean, he did not. Did he just love human bloodshed? That he would have motherfuckers slaying calves and oxen and cows and letting the blood drip all over the altar. And he even said the smell of the burning flesh was pleasing to him. This is what religious people never address, but then they criticize people that practice Fudon and Ifa and do animal sacrifice and have the nerve to be judgmental. And their God of the Old Testament was a savage, loved blood, death, destruction, war, and violence. It was one of the most violent gods recorded in history. Their religious history, anyway. So most definitely, I told you, if you watch a Catholic priest, remember, they're promoting that cannibalism in the mass, right? They want you to believe the blood in the wine in that chalice is the blood of a human being, and then they all come up and drink it. They're using a practice called transubstantiation. It's a magical practice. They want you to really accept and believe that is the blood of Christ you're drinking. That communion wafer is the body of Christ that you're eating. It's called transubstantiation. Look it up. It's one of them in the catechism of the Catholic Church that every Catholic is required to study. This is the spiritual beliefs behind it, and they want you to accept that. I know, I was born and raised Catholic. I had to go to catechism school as a young Catholic. I've gone back and looked at all that Catholic stuff and saw all the ritualistic shit that's encoded in there. So very vampiric in nature. They want you to believe this is the body and blood of a man. Drink and eat it. Think of that fuckery real quick, if you really put your mind. But watch an old school Catholic priest when he does it, the part of the mass where he says, do this in remembrance of me, and lifts the communion wafer and the chalice. Watch an old school one who does it quick. He does a quick tilt, north, south, east, west. Why? Because when you read in the Torah, anytime they made an sacrifice, a blood sacrifice to the God of the Old Testament, they were required to drip it on the four corners. Pay attention. I'm trying to tell you, I'm giving you the science of it. That's why you see the old priest do this. It goes to all four corners. He does it real quick though, right? That's to reenact when sacrifice was offered in the Torah upon the altar, when the blood sacrifice. So rather than it be an animal blood sacrifice, it is now what? A human sacrifice. Now, these fuckers, the animal wasn't good enough for this vicious God. Now he needed to sacrifice his own fucking son. And he needed to feed off the blood in the body of his own son. So we went from eating animals to now eating humans. See, nobody looks at it like that. And they want you to believe this concept. They want you to accept it and wholeheartedly embrace the shit. And you don't realize what you're doing subconsciously. There's a lot of fuckery in there, but yes, answer to your question is yes. All right, so Donkey George says, Set is Anubis's father. Anubis is a hyena jackal god of embalming and protector of the boundaries of death, but Set revels in war and death, and that's why he was always known, Set, as a donkey head. Well, that's not completely true. There's not 100% fact that he's just known as a donkey head. He also has the snout of various different animals. He's likened to a variety of different animals. The reason why is because he represents chaos. It's not officially known what that animal represents. It's chaotic because it's supposed to be chaotic, because Set can't be confined in any of them parameters. And it's one of the things that make him unique. Now, is there the donkey resemblance there? Most definitely. But there's a lot of different perspectives on that. Some say he has the snout of a pig or a boar. Some said he has, he can look like a canine, a donkey. The reason for that, that's done intentionally, because Set can't be confined. He was unique. Even his birth is unique out of any of the Egyptian deities, because what does the story say? He ripped himself from the womb of his mother Nut. Set couldn't even wait to be born. He said, fuck that, I'm ready to come out now. Again, further stabilizing the concept, he was a self-thinker. He represents the isolated consciousness, non-conformity. All of those things is represented in that. So that, yes, that's partially true. And yes, you can use the donkey analogy with the hyenas in Africa. Yes, there's a lot of symbolism there that you can correlate. Sherry King says, I just want to be clear, because I still get confused about working with energy, spirit, deity. Are they parts of us that we're tapping into as opposed to external? It's both. And this way people get confused. Okay, good question. This comes up all the time. It all has its origin within, because it starts there. So let me give you an example. All right. If you, I'll use Kali as an example. If you work with the deity Kali, it could be Horus, it could be Set, it could be Asset, right? Is there an external experience to this? Yes, but you manifest it based on what you've stored within. And let me give you an example. If you didn't know anything about Kali, right? At some point, nobody knew anything about Kali or any of these deities if you grew up Christian. Did they exist? Ask yourself that. What do I mean? Real simple. As you started to learn and study, whether it's Kali, Asset, Lilith, you started to read things. You started to study things. Then your eyes started to look on images. What you are doing now is you are programming your subconscious mind, but what you're absorbing. Remember, your subconscious mind is like a computer. It stores everything you put in it, and it stays in there. And you have the ability to access it. It could be good or bad, depending on what's being programmed, right? Now, what tends to happen is then you start doing, let's say you start doing meditations, rituals, sigil work with these spirits. And when people get confused, they say, well, I was doing a ritual with Kali, and Kali manifested. And I say, okay, describe what she looked like. And they describe what she looked like. I said, is that in line with pictures you've seen, things you've experienced? And they're going to have to say yes. So when they say all is mental, mental is all, the universe is mental, it all starts from within. It starts from within, again, going back to what I said earlier about what you accepted as a reality and what you've accepted in your realm of being real. So you have a preconceived image in your mind of what Kali looks like based on your experiences. They use this same concept in religion when they painted all these images of Jesus and the prophets, and they kept feeding and stamping in your mind this hippie image of Jesus, you know, like this, he's got the long hair. And then they did that intentionally because they know if they kept feeding you these images and pounding them in your mind, against our will, it's almost accepted as if it's real until we came to the reality that it's not. It's no different when you're studying. There is an external aspect and experience to this, but you must understand it all comes from within. You manifested, you created that external manifestation of Kali. How? Based on what you read, stored, what you experienced. You created that external manifestation of Set. So I want to make it clear, even though you're having an experience that is appearing to be outside of yourself, it still had its point of origin within. All is mental, mental is all, the universe is mental because it all starts within. Think about here's a better way to look at this. Think about when, let's say you got tasks to do tomorrow. Think about when you stop and you think in your head, all right, tomorrow I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna go down to the store, get my grocery. You're thinking of this, you're seeing it, you're saying it, you're visualizing, then after I leave the store, I gotta go stop over here, take care of that. You've now just mapped out your whole day. And then tomorrow you get up because you've already programmed in your mind how you visualized it. And now the next step is you now actually carry out the action, right? It's the same thing. You are the builder, creator, and destroyer of your universe. And you do it at all times by the choices and the decisions you make and what you embrace and accept in that reality around. It's that simple. So it's both, okay? This is why people get conflicted. I don't understand. Am I having an external experience? What is that if everything is internal? It is, but there's aspects to it. So hopefully that answers your question, helps you. All right. All right. What happened? What happened? All right. Blah, 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 blah. Shit. All right, man, I'm gonna have to wrap this up. Yeah, I see this one here about shadow work. This stuff on Naama. I would look, if you look at Kliphoth writings, the Ascending Temple of Flame has some good stuff on Naama, scattered through Kliphothic and books. There's not a lot on Naama itself because there's just not a lot of, like, I don't even know a book offhand that really just deals specifically with that. But she's very vampiric in nature. I mean, that's time to get into that. Maybe another time. I have time to really open that up. She plays a key important role in the Kliphoth. I would say look at different Kliphothic books because now some say she works obviously hand in hand with Lilith, right? They kind of go side and side. But I know where you can find the most information. You got to look at books that deal with working through the Kliphothic tree. The Tree of Kliphoth is a good book by Asenath Mason, where she touches a lot on Nama. Visions of the Night Side is another one that comes to hand, and things of that nature. All right, I'm just going to pop through some more quick ones. People, I got to run it up. I've already overextended my stay. I'm sorry, I can't get to everybody's questions. Yes, to Gray Sacco's question, yes, Set is definitely a part of the Egyptian Draconian current. I would look at, you can look at the Draconian Ritual book by Asenath Mason, another one, Set the Fury of Egypt. The Egyptian Draconian Ritual book by Bill Davenduck, that's another great book, all in line with the Egyptian Draconian current. So most 100%, most definitely. Also, Sekhem Apep by Michael W. Ford will give you a lot of good information on that. All right.
All right, people, I'm sorry. I'm just kind of busting through. I got to kind of get out of here. I definitely went way over my stay. I was trying to get off here about 1:30, so I'm about 30 minutes in the hole. If I couldn't get to your question this time, I apologize. Save it. Maybe come in line with the next time. You guys had some good questions. I know there's some more there, but unfortunately, I just don't have the time right now. So other than that, I'm gonna shut this down. Again, don't forget the upcoming classes we have for the month of May. You can see everything on the social media platforms listed there. I would encourage you, again, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti, B-A-N-I-T-I, patreon.com/Baniti, B-A-N-I-T-I. Tier 3 gives you access to all the monthly classes. You can sign up individually. It just makes more sense to have that monthly subscription where you can get 3 classes basically for the price of 1, as opposed to paying for 1 of them. So we have all that stuff coming up in May. We have the final class this Saturday for the month of April, the Klipathic Yoga Meditation and Kundalini Awakening class, which is, we got still more to cover on that. We're on class number 5. Shadow work class coming up next month, number 6, second week in May. Bunch of shit for May. So we got a lot of good things going on. Check out the page. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Other than that, I think I kind of covered probably a little more than I wanted to. But yeah, hopefully this helps, and hopefully I will see some of you in the upcoming classes. And it was good to see some different people in here because I usually don't come on this time. So it was good to see some different names in here. Those that couldn't make it, obviously you'll catch the recording. As you know, I don't plan them when I do this. I just kind of do it at the rip whenever I get time. I used to sometimes schedule these. I just don't know when I can do it anymore. So I just get on the fly. Sometimes it works out best like that because you just get into some shit. Also, too, I keep forgetting, you can also be a supporter of the channel. There's perks here where you can join. I will also, there's a level 3 here on YouTube. You can become a member. I will also be doing just some live streams, which I plan on doing the first one next month, just for members. You could also, the first tier, if you join, your questions go right to the top. I take those questions first. It's just a nice little perk thing, and it shows a little support for the channel. So there's different ways you can support the platform, whether it's here on YouTube or Patreon. Check it out. Everything's in the description box. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Gots to go. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the Patreon members, the YouTube subscribers. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And other than that, I'll see you guys on the next live. All right. Infernal blessings, and we will talk